The Simple Life, Chapter 13, Part 2, Education in Simplicity. Let us deduce a few practical applications from this principle. Just because the child is of the future, we must attach him to the past by piety. We owe it to him to reclothe tradition in the most practical forms, and those most susceptible of creating a strong impression. In there is the exceptional place which the ancients, in the cult of remembrance, and by extension the history of the domestic hearthstone, should hold in an education and a home. It is, above all, toward our children that we feel a duty when we assign the place of honor to our grandparents. Nothing speaks so forcibly to a child, or develops in him more the sentiments of modesty, than to see his father and mother show towards the old, sometimes infirm grandfather, an attitude of respect. There is there a perpetual lesson of things which he cannot resist. That it may have its full force, it is necessary that, in a home, a tacit accord reigns among all the adults. In the eyes of the child, they are all of one solidarity, held to respect each other, to understand each other under pain of compromising the educational authority. And to the number of those persons we must include the domestics. A servant is a grown person, and it is the same sentiment of respect which is wounded when a child shows a lack of respect to a servant as when he lacks that sentiment towards his father or grandfather. As soon as he addresses one impolite or arrogant word to anyone older than himself, he leaves the path that a child should not quit. And if the parents allow this to happen without letting him know what he has done, they will perceive by his conduct towards them that the enemy has entered into his heart. They who think that the child is naturally disrespectful are mistaken when they dwell upon the examples so numerous of irreverence which our youth shows us. At bottom, respect is a need for the child. The child aspires confusedly to respect and admire something. But when we do not draw benefit from that aspiration, it loses or corrupts itself. By our lack of cohesion and mutual deference, we, the grown people, discredit our own cause, and that of all respectable things in the eyes of the child. We inoculate him with a bad spirit, whose effects turn against us later. This sad truth appears nowhere with greater force than in the relations between masters and servitors, such as we have created them. Our social faults, our lack of simplicity and kindness, fall on the heads of our children. There are certainly but few of the middle or bourgeois class who understand that it is better to lose a few thousands of francs than to let the children lose the respect for the domestics who represent the category of the humble ones in our homes. Nothing is truer, however. Maintain as much as you like the conventionalities and the distances of this sort of delimitation of social frontiers which permits each one to keep his place and observe the hierarchy. It is a good thing, I am persuaded of that, but on condition that we do not forget that those who serve us are men as well as we are. You impose forms of language upon your domestics, attitudes, external signs of the respect they owe you. Teach also your children, and occupy yourself personally with the process which will show your domestics that you respect their personal dignity as you would wish them to respect you. You have there an excellent field for study to draw you towards the practice of mutual respect, which is one of the essential conditions of social health. I fear that we profit too little from it. You exact respect, but you do not practice it. So the most often you obtain but hypocrisy, and you have for supplementary result a very unexpected one. You have cultivated pride in your children. These two factors combined gather great difficulties for that future that you ought to safeguard. I am therefore right to say that you have had a sensible loss the day when you have by your habits and practices brought a diminution of respect. Why should I not say it? Seems to me that the greater part among us works towards that diminution. Everywhere and in almost all social classes, I notice that they nourish a very bad spirit in children, the spirit of reciprocal scorn. Here they despise someone whose hands are calloused and who wears working clothes. There they despise someone who does not wear the workman's blouse. Children raised in that spirit will someday make poor citizens. All that is absolutely lacking in that simplicity, which causes men of good will in different degrees of a society to collaborate together without being restrained by the secondary distances which separate them. If the spirit of caste causes a loss of respect, the party spirit, whatever it is, makes it lose as much. In certain centers, they bring up their children in such a manner that they venerate but one country only, theirs, one sole politic, that of their parents and masters, one single religion, that which they inculcate. Do they really imagine that they can form beings in this way, respectful to country, religion, law? It is of good alloy, the respect which reaches only those who touch or belong to us. Singular blindness of cliques and circles who abrogate with so much ingenuous complacence the titles of schools of respect, and who aside from themselves respect nothing. At bottom they say, country, religion, law, that is us. Such teaching engenders fanaticism. Now, if the fanaticism is not the sole antisocial ferment, it is certainly one of the most energetic ones. If simplicity of the heart is an essential condition of respect, simplicity of life is the best school. Whatever be your condition of fortune, avoid all that may cause your children to believe that they are more than others. Even when your situation permits you to dress them richly, think of the damage that you could cause them in exciting their vanity. Preserve them from the misfortune of ever believing that it suffices to be dressed beautifully to possess distinction. And above all, do not add to the gaiety of their hearts by their costumes and their habits, the distances that separate them already from their fellows. Dress them simply. If, on the contrary, you must make efforts of economy to give your children the pleasure of being elegantly dressed, I beg you to reserve for another and better cause your spirit of sacrifice. You risk seeing it badly recompensed. You scatter your money, while it would be better if you saved it for serious needs. You prepare for yourself a later harvest of ingratitude. How dangerous it is to accustom your sons and daughters to a manner of life which exceeds your means and theirs. First, that is very bad for the pocket. And next, it develops the spirit of scorn in the very bosom of the family. If you dress your children like little lords and give them reason to believe that they are your superiors, is it astonishing if they finish by despising you? You would have fed those of another class. Now this kind of product costs dearly and values nothing. There is also a certain fashion of instructing children which for clearest results brings them to despise their parents, their surroundings, and the labors in the midst of which they have grown up. Such an instruction is a calamity. It is good only to produce a legion of discontented ones who separate themselves from their stock, their origin, their affinities, of all of which in some, makes the first stuff of a man. Once detached from the robust tree which produced them, the wind of their foolish ambition blows them back and forth like dead leaves, which gather in certain places to ferment and rot one upon another. Nature does not move by jumps and bounds, but by slow and sure movement. Let us imitate her in the manner of preparing a career for our children. Do not confound the advancement with those exercises which they call double somersaults. Let us not bring up our children in such a way that they will come to despise work, aspirations, and the spirit of simplicity of the paternal home. Do not expose them to the evil temptation of being ashamed of our poverty, if they should ever achieve fortune. A society is very sick the day when the sons of peasants forsake the plow, when the sons of sailors desert the sea, or working girls, in the hope of being taken for heiresses, prefer to walk alone in the streets rather than on the arms of their good parents. A society is healthy, on the contrary, when each member applies himself to do about the same thing as his parents are doing, but better, aiming to lift himself, yet contents himself with the most modest functions, filling them conscientiously. Education should form free men. If you bring up your children for liberty, do it simply, and do not fear to thus destroy their happiness. Quite the contrary. The more playthings, holidays, and extraordinary pleasures a child has, the less he is amused. There is in that a sure indication. Let us be sober in our means of rejoicing and diversions for youth, and above all, do not create fictitious needs lightly. Food, clothing, shelter, amusements, let all these be natural and as little complicated as possible. To make life agreeable to children, certain parents give them habits of gluttony and idleness, allow them excitements incompatible with their age, multiply invitations and spectacles. Poor presents are these. Instead of a free man, you raise up a slave. Too accustomed to luxury, he will weary of it, and in spite of it, and when for one reason or another his comfort is gone, he will suffer, and you with him. And what is worse, you will perhaps both be dispossessed under grand occasions of life to sacrifice human dignity, truth, duty, by pure cowardice. Bring up your children, therefore, simply, I would say most rudely. Draw them to fortifying exercises, through privations even. Let them rather be of those who are the best prepared to sleep hard, bear fatigue, than those who love the pleasures of the table and the comforts of a bed. Thus we shall make of them independent men and solid ones, on whom we can count, and who will never sell themselves for a little personal comfort, and who, nevertheless, more than anyone, will have the faculty of being happy. A too easy life brings a sort of lassitude of the vital energies. One becomes weary, disillusioned, a young old man, without faculty for amusing himself. How many children and young people are today in this condition? On them are deposited, like a racking mold, the traces of our decrepitudes, our skepticisms, our vices, and the bad habits contracted in our society. How many returns on ourselves these faded youths make us take? How many warnings engraved on our brows? These shadows tell us, even by the contrast, that happiness consists in being a real living being, active, heedless, virgin of the yoke of passions, fictitious needs, unhealthy excitements, having kept in his heart the faculty to enjoy the light of day, the air, and in his heart to have a capacity for loving and to feel with power all that is generous and fine. Fictitious life engenders fictitious thought and badly assured speech. Healthy habits, strong impressions, ordinarily contact with reality naturally lead to frank speech. Falsehood is a vice of slaves, the refuge of cowards and the weak. He who is free and firm is also disenfranchised from the collar. Let us encourage in our children that happy courage that tells us without chewing their words. What do we ordinarily do? We turn them inward. We level their natures in view of the uniformity, which for the great flock is the synonym of good tone. To think with this mind, feel with this heart, express the real himself. What an impolite thing! What rusticity! Oh, the atrocious education that this is which consists in perpetually stifling in each of us the only thing which gives him his reason for being. Of how many soul murders are we not guilty? Some are beaten down with the blows of a club, others gently smothered between two eiderdowns. Everything conspires against independent characters. Little they wish to see us like images or dolls grown. They love us on condition that we shall be like the rest of the world. Automatons. When we have seen one, we have seen all. It is for that the lack of originality and initiative has won us, and that platitude and monotony are the distinctive marks of our life. Truth will set us free. Teach our children to be themselves, to give their trumpets their own clear sound. Make loyalty a need, and in their gravest mistakes, if they avow them, count it as a merit to have been openly naughty. To frankness associate innocence in our educational solicitude. Let us have for that companion of infancy innocence, all possible solicitude, a trifle wild though it be, yet so graceful and beneficent. Do not frighten it away. When it has fled from a place, it is rare that it ever returns. This innocence is not only the sister of truth, guardian of the qualities belonging to both, it is still a great educational and revealing power. I see around us the people so-called positive who are armed with terrifying spectacles and great scissors to bring forth those innocents and clip their wings. They extirpate the innocence of the world, of thought, of education, and pursue them to the very regions of their dreams. Under the pretense of making men of them, they hinder them from being children, as though, before the ripened fruits of autumn, it did not need the flowers, the perfumes, the songs, the fairyland of spring. I ask grace for all that which is innocent and simple, not only for its innocent daintiness which darts around the curly heads, but also for the legend, the innocent song, the stories of the world of marvels and mystery. The sense of the marvelous is the first form of that sense of the infinite, without which man is like a bird deprived of its wings. Do not wean childhood from the marvelous with the end in view to guard for him the capacity to lift himself above this earthly earth and to appreciate later those pious and touching symbols of bygone ages, where human truth has found expressions which our arid logic will never replace. End of chapter 13.